Well, hi there, BJ.
Hey, good evening. Our first evening run.
Yes, and one where I'm having a couple of little technical glitches here, but I think I can fix them, and we'll
Awesome.
get
Well,
good.
let's get right into this because we're going to spend an hour for sure.
You bet.
Could, j-
Yeah.
just a little introduction to what we're doing. When Steve first pitched this idea to me about getting into doing something like this, the two of us kind of mutually decided. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. We weren't going to go after big names in volleyball. That kind of was being done by a bunch of other people. We were looking for the excellent coaches that were just a little bit off the big radar.
Or the
Not going
coaches who
for Russell
wanted to
Cole.
learn, because
Yeah,
we
yeah,
had
yeah.
some neophytes too, or not
Right.
neophytes, but somebody with a new high school program, for example.
So we've avoided some of these people, and we finally came up with an angle that we could that we felt comfortable bringing some of our more
Mentors.
well-known folks in, and that is we came up with four people well known to the volleyball crowd that are all into new endeavors or endeavors that are a little bit different than their norm. Because the guy we're having on tonight, John Kessel, is probably he's the guy you should have on first. Your first episode should be Kessel, and if it's a volleyball podcast, so let's get him on here and start grilling him.
I don't know.
There he is.
The name grill, the word grill has gone from volleyball drill that's game like to cooking for 150 people
Yeah,
in an event. So I've
that's
got 20 grills in my life now, not and they all heat up with propane.
right. And I know that you're not out of volleyball. We've talked a couple of times, or just we've caught up with you. Tell us first, since this is a volleyball podcast, what are you doing in volleyball more recently? What's going on?
Well, leaving volleyball at USA Volleyball allows me to do a heck of a lot more international stuff. In the last year, I've done these level 1 FIVB courses in Philippines, Estonia, Norway, 3 months in Bonaire, which is one of the Dutch ABCs, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, that are called the Diver's Paradise. So I did a lot of diving and just working with programs. I'm headed up Saturday to Canada to work with the ACE volleyball program out of Calgary. And, the people that want to learn, I'm also doing a lot of different other sports. I'm working with the Dallas Stars in February, and, still been doing a lot of Major League Baseball, and spent a day with True Sports, USADA. In fact, those of you that have never tapped into the USADA should go to their True Sport website and download a lot of really good coaches, free stuff. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency is there to proactively not just talk about doping per se, or the problems of drugs, or it's the mental wellness of the coach. We've had 3 years of doing it for the coach, for the players. Um, it there's some really good people talking across sports and working with ICC, the International Coaches education group. And then the big things that I love doing is Beach Nation with Todd Rogers, Mark Fishman, Patty Dodd, a lot of Paralympic and beach volleyball, para beach they call it there, and working with a neat guy, Leslie DeJong, who has sold his house, and he's spent a year now on this journey for the Let's Keep the Ball Flying Foundation. So I'm doing their educational product there. They do grassroots, very low level grassroots courses in underdeveloped countries all over the world, mostly Africa, but Thailand and the Philippines and places that the sport is just a huge sport around the world, and so many people love to play it, and in just different forms too. I mean, you've got elbow volleyball in the Philippines, and you've got sepak takraw in the Asian countries, and then they're doing head volley, the foot volley down in Brazil, and they even have a foot volley league in Miami there for a while and stuff, and fist ball, and all these crazy ways and wonderful ways that people choose to do the sport a little differently. So the Let's Keep the Ball Flying Foundation, I urge you to go look at. He's got 10 pros that are going to be giving 1% of their salary to his foundation in it, because they know what he's doing is impacting the grassroots area, and I love that kind of stuff. And then a guy that you should interview when he has time, Matthias. He's in charge of volleybrains.com, and I've worked with him. Going to be helping him out as well. He's just a passionate engineer who, in his free time, his wife being a former pro for many years, he's got like a 6 and an 8-year-old, or maybe a 5 and a 6-year-old, and those kind of guys and gals it's just so neat, because they're going to be doing this for a while, and not walking away from it because their family, you might say, is involved when they got children. So those are some of the volleyball stuff I'm doing for sure. I'm going to share a story. We was doing a warm up. I did this clinic in Estonia, and in advance, we were playing in the gym that the USA played USSR in advance of the 1988 Seoul Olympics, where we battled them in the finals and won the gold. And a prelim match was being played in Estonia, in Tallinn, the capital. And the president of, now mind you, Estonia is on the Russian border, okay? Their lake that's just outside the capital, half of their lake is theirs, and half the other lake, that same lake, is Russia. So the president is the Minister of Defense. And we talked a long time about the uniqueness of having Russia across your border. But when we did the clinic we were a 5-day FIVB clinic, morning, noon, and night type stuff. We had 5 different countries come in, and I sent out this piece of paper before, email, and said, let me know what you want to get out of this course, what your concerns are and everything, and how long you've coached. And I had a huge spectrum for this group in Estonia. And 2 of them said, I've never coached before, so anything's going to be great. Well, long story short, these 2 were professional volleyball players, Yana Kulan and Sara. They had played for over almost a quarter of a century professionally, all over the world. I mean, Brazil, Japan, China. I think Yana went to Auburn or something for 2 years when she was younger. And we're warming up playing. We did some sitting volleyball, of course, and we did beach volleyball ideas, and the whole gamut. And on the 3rd or 2nd day, I came up to Yana, and she was smiling as she was warming up. And I said, Yana, you're not allowed to smile. You're not supposed to have fun. We're training. And she laughed again, because by then she knew who I was. And she goes, John, this is the first time I've ever had fun in volleyball. I mean, this is a 20-plus year pro. And she said, first time I'm having fun. So reaching out to these other sports and reaching out to these other nations is still something I'm fortunate to be able to have time to do because I'm retired, right? So I get to go away and fly up to Calgary on Saturday.
When we were, I'm pretty sure when we were in Morocco. I don't remember who, but I was introducing you to somebody, and uh, I said, John has literally been around the world teaching and coaching volleyball and volleyball coaches, and you very gently corrected me and said, it's been at least 7 times around the world.
Oh, I don't even know that. I mean, I'm a million miler on United and whatever Delta and stuff, but the trip that I did to the Philippines was in just before the holidays, so it was in November, and we had a huge qualification for the World Championships going on, and I had 30 great coaches. It was one of the more fun clinics for me even. And when I flew in, I came from Denver to LA to Manila. And they said, John, we've got a problem getting you home because it's the holidays. Everybody's going to the US from the Philippines. We can't get you a flight until mid-December. And I said, okay, just get me home. Well, sure enough, I just to go to the Philippines, I flew around the world. I flew Manila to
Wow.
Dubai, Dubai to New York City, New York City to Chicago, Chicago to Colorado Springs. And I literally went around the world to do a
Eight
clinic
trips
to help
around.
people. You know? But
Yeah,
it's just, that I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I get to talk to passionate people like you two and people that might be listening and help them have more effective and efficient programming and stuff. And gold medal squared, the stuff that uh, Coach Your Brains Out podcast that Billy Allen's been doing, just a chance to share some ideas, but to see them, like Trevor Reagan at Learner Lab, pushing their own envelope into learning is pretty cool. So, final story, and then you can ask me any other question, is last night I went to see Michael Martin Murphey, the country cowboy Christmas, because of our ranch project that we're doing. And in the end, we donated to him, and he gave us a guitar that he wrote the entire Wildfire song
wow.
lyrics on the outside of the guitar. And then he signed it, and he said, "What do you want me to say?" And I said, "Just say Ancora Imparo." And he goes, "What the hell is that?" And I said, it's Michelangelo said it when he was painting at the Sistine Chapel that he's still learning. It's in Italian that I'm still learning. And I think that that's the sign of a great coach, no matter how many years you've coached, is that you are so hungry to keep learning so that you are a better mentor to your athletes and develop better relationships and develop better programs and training and that whole line about if you coach the skill, the player might not develop. If you coach the whole player, the skill will develop. That's what I firmly believe. So the chance to get to know Yana and Sarah and all these people around the world that love our sport just as much as we do, I'm very grateful for that chance.
Yeah, and that shows through, obviously, and the passion with which you teach. The and probably the more important, or the reason that we're having you on is talking about kind of your next endeavor. And I know volleyball led you into this, to some degree. That's the link to volleyball, which we're gonna talk through. But tell us about the project that you've been working on since, it was a couple of years that you were working for both USA Volleyball and working on this passion project, you and Lily. Tell
Yeah.
us what you have on there and the link between volleyball and what you're doing.
Well, it first starts at Olympic level. When I was 12, I went to Bob Mathias Sierra Boys Camp. Didn't know anybody, scared shitless. But, my folks said, this is a big deal. You got to, this is going to be good for you. And Bob Mathias, for the vast majority of it, he was not only like one of the first Wheaties box people, but he was a two-time Olympic decathlon gold medalist for the United States in 48 and 52, which shows that I'm in my 70s. And in doing so, he created this Sierra Boys Camp, and I didn't know a soul, so I grabbed my fishing rod that I brought, and I went down to his lake, and I caught a bass. I caught a huge bass. I landed it and took it up to the kitchen and said, does anybody want to cook this bass? And the chef goes, oh my God, that's the biggest bass I've ever seen out of this lake. Bob loves bass. Is that okay? We give it to him? Oh, sure. I'm going to go back to fishing, but here's a big bass for you guys. And that night, at the first dinner, he's up at the stage, and everybody, all the counselors are there. We got about 250 boys there at this camp, and I'm with my table, so I'm starting to get to know my cabin mates. We had a guy named Pee Wee who was 6'8", as my counselor. And all of a sudden he goes ting, ting, ting on his glass, and he stands up to speak, and about the second thing out of his mouth, he says, I am eating the biggest bass ever caught out of this lake, and it's delicious. And where is young John Kessel? Would you please stand up? Oh my God, oh Jesus! And I stand up, and he says, if you want to know how to catch fish, go talk to that boy. This is the biggest fish out of this lake ever. Well, immediately at the age of 12, which is an impactful age, that 12 to 14 for girls and boys is pretty impactful. Immediately all I did was teach. I just taught fishing for 5 days of my time at camp, as well as did the activities with my cabin mates. So I saw the impact of the wilderness and the outdoors, and I've always wanted to give back in some way to camp. And my wife and I both did the 96 Olympics or Paralympics. Sorry, I did the Olympics, but she only did the Paralympics. And there, you see Kazakhstan come in with T-shirts that they write with felt pens on their chest to be the numbers, because they don't have any uniform costs that they can pay for or anything. And Mike Hewlett, whose shirt I'm wearing in his honor, was the coach of the men's team at that time, and the sitting team. And we were hosting, so we got in, and we had a standing program at the time too. But I just remember being totally exhausted because I was the producer. You see, I was the producer of the Olympics, and at the Olympic level with a guy named Phil Bush out of A5 when he had created that program with other people. Phil and I were the producers, and Phil's wife had a baby, and so he wasn't there the whole time. And you work 20 plus hour days. And the NBC guy that was our connection for all the shows, he had a heart attack and died. And so we were scrambling on another level to create everything that we could. But you have 10,000 athletes in the Olympics roughly, and you had 100,000 volunteers and 10,000 staff. Then the Olympics are over, and 8 days later it flipped to the Paralympics. And what happened there? 5,000 athletes, blind and in wheelchairs often, and 10,000 volunteers, not 100,000, and 1,000 staffers. Now, luckily, I'd done the Olympics, and so when I did the Paralympics as the producer, I did the scoreboard, I did the music, I did 5 different things that at the time before the Olympics we had help, and you didn't for the sitting game. But I got a chance to work with the Swedish team and all these amazing athletes at the Paralympic level. And I think at that point, I knew that I wanted to help that version grow more, just like we'd already achieved getting beach into the Olympics. Because Atlanta, 96, I didn't do beach, I did indoor. It was when the beach game became part of the Olympics. And it took a huge sacrifice from USA Volleyball to make that happen to the FIVB. A lot of people don't realize it wouldn't have gotten to the Olympics if we hadn't changed sponsors to another company so that the Atlantic Committee for the Olympic Games allowed beach volleyball to be in. And USA Volleyball was huge in that. So there I saw the parasite, and I've now been on the board for 10 or 12 years and part of their education program internationally, and we're doing some online development right now for World Paravolley. But with Lily, we both had seen the impact of Haiti, the first earthquake, not the last one, but the big one that hit Port-au-Prince. So she brought in a bunch of people to help, and she's thinking about doing the same thing in Gaza once it gets safe. But when Haiti had the problem, we brought in doctors from Harvard and all these people to help, and it was incredibly difficult because the doctors were losing so many people because of the facilities being horribly damaged, and what they were used to in the States they didn't have. And they had PTSD, that's bottom line. And fast forward to what we wanted to do, we wanted to find a place that we could help people heal in the wilderness. Our vision, to share the transformative power of time spent in the wild. So we then had COVID hit, which meant I had to leave USA Volleyball. And in doing so, we changed from just being a place for veterans to heal to be a place to have first responders of any sort heal. And the site is called Puma Hills, and it's also called Bison Peak Lodge at Puma Hills. It's just an hour out of Colorado Springs. It's 2 hours out of Denver. It's surrounded by 500,000 acres of national forest. What you're looking at is a view of McCurdy and bison, and that's the Lost Creek Wilderness area in this picture right here. I look out at night, and there's nobody around us for 500,000 acres. It's like I'd like to thank everybody because it's your land, taxpayer land, national forest, so you own it, but nobody's going to build a house there. So we never see anything but what we've been doing as a project. And we've worked with Amy Grant and Vince Gill, Michael Martin Murphy, we hope to get him up there, who I went and saw in concert yesterday evening with my wife. And we supply the venue for people that have the skill to program and help people heal. And one of the groups that we brought in, Colorado College, my alma mater, where I first began coaching in 1971. We brought in Air Force, where my stepdaughter has coached for about half a decade. They had their best season in history this year. And we brought in with Peter Haberle. He used the site for 10 days, our property, to heal the women's water polo team. Because what happened before the Tokyo Olympics, they were in Seoul and they won the world championships, and they were celebrating on the second floor of a bar, and the second floor collapsed and killed 26 South Koreans underneath them and broke a couple of their legs and injured some of them. And they had their own form of survivor guilt and guilt/PTSD. So Peter brought them in for 10 days, 7 of those days on our property. That was a silent retreat. And that was very interesting, I gotta say. But nobody spoke. You just wrote on a whiteboard, I have a stomach ache, and the doctor would write back, this is what you got to do for your stomach ache or whatever. And they went and climbed 3 14ers in one day after they broke their silence. They took a piece of quartz. Each of them took a piece of quartz when they broke silence and carried it with them to Tokyo, and they won the gold medal in Tokyo. But more importantly, they healed. And we've had a group called planthealer.org come on 250 people from 12 different countries they did 100 classes in the time that they were there, about the week that they were there. And they use plants, including all the plants on our property, to help people heal. And we just want to let this wilderness place that we have, which has a lodge, it has a beautiful event center, it has 3 cabins that are year round, and we're building some smaller A-frames. We've got teepees, we've got Buckminster Fuller geodomes from Ukraine, we've got Conestoga wagons we've built. And BJ, I think you've been there. I'm 90%, 95% sure.
Yeah.
Sort of blends in sometimes, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't recognize it because we've just keep making these upgrades to it. And I know that you guys are wondering, and how is it similar to volleyball? But because of my experience in volleyball, we formed a team for sure. We have one of the guys that was in Benghazi when it was attacked. He won't talk about it, but he was Special Forces, and he is our iron master. He's a single dad now, and he takes care of 2 of his kids, and they live in one of the cabins in the winter and do all their iron work. Almost everybody is a veteran, and this team, that we have formed, we had a Thanksgiving dinner for them, of course, and they come from different countries, and they are all committed to our mission, so that when they see something that could be better than we've created it, they say, what if we did this, with no fear of saying this in case they get, shut down or laughed at or whatever. There's none of that. It's all a team. I think the biggest thing I've learned, that story about the great John Wooden there's 4 words that I'm going to share with new coaches here, and maybe old coaches that haven't heard even. In '88, we won the gold medal in men's volleyball, and we're flying back. Of course, you could walk around the bulkhead and anything, and I was talking to Marv Dunphy about this brand new book I was writing for USA Volleyball called Impact, Increased Mastery and Professional Application of Coaching Theory. That took a day at Bill Neville's place with Mike Fleming and Bill to figure out of the dictionary how to make the word impact, which is what we wanted to do, make an impact, would fit into coaching. So I said, Marv, you've done your thesis on John Wooden, probably ESPN called him the #1 coach in the history of sport in the U.S. in the last 50 years. You did your PhD thesis on him. I'm doing this brand new book for brand new coaches. Can you tell me in 25 words or less what you learned after interviewing him for 100 hours and being around him for years? And he said, John, I don't need 25 words. I just need 2. And that is to be consistent. He said, every coach, to watch him in action, no matter who he's treating, the worst player on the team or the best player that are going to the NBA, as he goes to win 10 NCAA titles in his career at UCLA as the basketball coach. And any book on John Wooden is a great book, including They Call Me Coach, even though they're 40, 50 years old, because he gets it. And what he did is something worth emulating. He said, just be consistent. I don't care. He didn't treat everybody equally, but he treated everybody consistently. And when I went to study him more, I found out, and I put in the impact manual, that 76% of his wording to his athletes was specific. So be specific. In volleyball, I used to say, that's it, way to go, good job, nice try. And now I'm just putting in a comma and adding what it is so that I'm a better coach. I'm saying, because the kids should look at you and say, this it you're talking about, care to be more specific? So I'm up in the we're building now, and we're creating and moving dirt and digging holes and doing all this, cutting down trees, and the answer there is, when you've got a team, you still have to be specific. You can't say put that there. You can't do that. It ain't gonna fly. You got to be specific.
Right.
But we've created this mission and culture, and we also want them to be adaptable, and be able to adjust to we're digging for a shed, and we hit a rock the size of a Volkswagen. All right, we got to move the shed. We got to come up with a new way and place to put the shed. It ain't going to work this way, because we're not going to be able to dig out a Volkswagen-sized rock, and I don't want to go get a jackhammer for a few days and hammer this thing to pieces or anything too. So, because we can't afford that. This is all self-funded, and I worked at USA Volleyball, which means I didn't make a lot of money in my 30 years at USA Volleyball. But Lily's company, Professional and Scientific Associates, is doing well, and their team that does 90 events around the world is on board with this whole project as well, and they've been there for meetings, and they support the mission to help those that can heal in the wilderness. So that's what I know. And
Yeah,
it's legacy. You can't take it
in
with
the
you.
wilderness. You keep saying the wilderness, and you're right. I have been there. I was out. I think it was one of the last HP clinics. The place is the main lodge is incredible. All newly remodeled. It's hard to call it a lodge. It feels like a mansion. It's a beautiful, very comfortable place to be. Um, I don't recall how many people could stay in the main lodge, but it's a fair number. And then the multiple buildings around are all new. Jen mentioned teepees, and you have to get the idea of a teepee. The outside of the teepee looks like a teepee. The inside of the teepee looks like an efficiency in New York City in a brand new building. It's a double bed and heater and a desk, and they're beautiful places with beautiful and comfortable places for anybody of any ability to be able to go in and use, which I think is another small part of the reason I wanted to get you on. This isn't just a retreat. It's a place that any of our volleyball friends could go to, rent a room. You can book with Puma Hills and go and stay there and do one of the 50 or 100 different activities that are out there, from sporting events to not sporting events. Just the wilderness activities. It's far more than what John.
It would be the word glamping is for sure part of the word, because you have heated mattress pads, electricity now to every structure, including all the teepees and tents and wagons and stuff. And you have Tempur-Pedic mattresses, and most teepees have double queens. The tents have double queens or whatever, but they're all heated, and you got electricity. And we have Starlink, although we like to turn it off so that people escape their cell phones. There is no cell phone service to it. And it's amazing. It's only 60 miles away from Colorado Springs. It takes us an hour and 10 minutes to get there. And when you make the turn on the County Road 77, we happen to be in Park County, so we get a lot of fun stuff. If you the whole Park County shtick and everything happens in our world too. But the road that you turn off of the Lake George after you go 40 miles out of the springs and you turn right, you guys, I only see 5 cars, 4 cars, sometimes no cars, but never more than half a dozen cars on the last 20 miles of this road coming the other way, total. So you are I feel my body just goes when I make that turn because I'm in traffic essentially before that. And then I make this turn. And, we've got ice fishing and lakes and horseback riding down at Terrial River Ranch. And former classmate of mine has the Eagle River Ranch, which is a huge ranching thing about 7 miles up valley from us. And we work together to make people have a great experience in the wild. And boy, am I lucky, is all that it is. I mean, I've never worked this hard physically, cutting down trees and building and things, but at the same time, it's all for, that if you make another neat place with the geodome, or that we're going to be building some mini A-frames that are going to be like 200 square feet A-frames, that the people that are going to be in there heal. And the veterans that have come for music retreats and things like what we do, the veterans that come, they come back later with their families and say, this is the spot on this property that I healed. This is where I wrote a song. The music retreats we do with Challenge America and Amy Grant and Vince Gill have helped. What they do is we house a singer songwriter and a music therapist and the veteran. Usually often they come with a service dog, and they write a song for a concert at the end of this experience to play for the crowd, whoever can come. But they come back and say, this is where I healed with their families. This is the spot that I healed. And they don't spend the night necessarily. They just want to come back and show where the transition was made. And the story that impacted me the most was the vet who had killed about 50 people in insurgents, as we called them, in Iraq. And his grandmother wouldn't sleep in the same house because she was afraid that he would have nightmares or night terrors and kill her. So he wrote a lullaby to his grandmother and played it. Grandma came up to the concert, played it for the grandma type stuff, and now they stay in the same place, the same house. And to that kind of impact for nurses and because the COVID, like the stuff in Haiti that triggered this addition of first responders, the ambulance guys and gals and the fire people, they go through some pretty awful shit and they need time to heal. And that's hopefully what we can provide. But we've got to do things like weddings or corporate events in order to be able to pay for the projects that we're doing for vets and others. We'd rather just be doing vets all our lives and stuff, first responders, but we can't afford it yet. We aren't wealthy. This is
Yeah.
there's a small business loan here that my wife is third payment authorization of December 31st, 2024 that she's got going so we can keep things going, taking out loans.
Well, I think there's no shame in uh, in having a beautiful place that can be used by anybody, and there's nothing wrong with having people come in. I mean, I think it's admirable in a lot of ways to have people come in that are there just to celebrate their own, whether it's a wedding or a birthday or
Yeah.
even a vacation or to go and ski somewhere. It's you're close to ski places, just to go out there and have some fun, and also know that just by being there, they're doing some good because they get to help keep the doors open. And I think that would be for me, that'd be a selling point in having an event at a place like yours, because you can have your fun night or your fun weekend or however long you want to stay, and you're also helping somebody out that's in need. It's a neat
Yeah.
concept.
No,
It's
thanks, BJ.
fun to hear about.
Steve, we both, miss Mike Hewlett a great deal. And the 4-time Paralympic sitting volleyball coach, men and women's, that I was and have known since he was not diabetic and had limbs and didn't have to become a quad amputee to keep his life going on longer than anybody expected. Um, as he coached, I had him set up to come do a Native American clinic. We do a lot of Ute Indian. We have Ute prayer trees and Ute ceremony trees and directional trees on the properties from 500 years ago. This was the Utes' property before we Westerners came along, Americans. And the Native American group, if you are listening to this and you have a Native American nation in your area, I would ask you, and I'd help out if you want, but I would ask you to reach out to that coach and share ideas and secrets to help that generally girls volleyball coach to not feel so isolated in their silo. The amazing Rebecca Monet brought me in a good 10, 15 years ago up to the Makah Nation, which is the most north and west part of the continental United States. They're on the ocean, of course. Canada's across the bay, and you're 6 hours out of Seattle. And they were not getting to do much good volleyball. And so we started that thing that I love to do, a youth program at the elementary school, got her online on playing small-sided games, and we got the middle school program to connect up to the varsity program. And sure enough, in really just a couple years, all of a sudden they're going to state. And they went to state, I think, this year again. And in doing so, what you see is that the Navajo, which is part of the Starlings USA program, I was been on that board for a long time, and the Starlings teams and cities, the Navajo base out of Tuba City, and they play great volleyball. They're just little, but they're skillful as heck, and they get, I think Starlings has given over 1,000 scholarships to not just Native American kids, but economically disadvantaged kids over the course of their career. And we lost Byron Schumann, sadly, in September. He founded it with our Olympian Kim Oden. But if you have a Starlings program or you have these Native American groups, I came up and did the Oneida Nation, BJ. I think that's in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I still have a really nice plaque from them for the thanks for them helping them, strengthen their volleyball program. But to go work with those coaches and help them see that they're not alone and they can be competitive. They just have to get them started loving volleyball and basketball and track and field, but loving volleyball and by playing doubles and playing small-sided games at an earlier age. So help them. The Native Americans love volleyball in every nation I've ever been in.
You spent your COVID time out at the lodge, and you were lucky enough to have family around. I'm fairly certain Cody was there. I can't remember if Mackenzie came back or not, and stayed. But you guys did some interesting things while you were out there.
Yeah, yeah. I'd kind of forgotten in that part of life. Cody's story is he's a kid that played 10 sports growing up. So I'm not one of those volleyball only dads type person. Captain of his tennis team in high school, captain of his lacrosse team in high school. I just saw his old lacrosse coach in Lowe's Hardware just recently. And we had a long, fun talk about where Cody is now as a professional for Berlin Recycling. But his pathway went from an IB school where he just played on a club to Princeton, where he was an All-American. And now he's in his 8th year of playing professional, and he does some amazing things. But what happened COVID-wise to him, he called me on a Sunday, all excited in March of 20, and said, Dad, I just won the MVP award. I got this like €1,000 watch. I played great. I said, yeah, I got a chance to watch you on the internet. It's awesome. And he was pretty excited. Then on Tuesday, he called me up and said, Dad, they just pulled us all together and they're going to play the next match on Sunday with no fans. Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's a solution to keep playing. The next day he calls back and says, "Oh my God, Dad, they just canceled the season. What am I going to do?" And on Thursday, Trump announced the EU travel ban. This is again March of 2020.
Right.
And then on Friday, he turned in his car that they give him. And on Saturday, he turned in his apartment keys he stays for free, right? And on Sunday, he flew to Denver, back home. His life totally flipped around. So we have a huge artificial field of turf, and we put up a volleyball net, and EC and some of the Air Force kids would come up and train with him. And then he took it upon him to build a 9-hole pine cone putt-putt golf course up on the hill. And in doing so, he said, "I'm going to build a gym out of natural products." And so he built an elk antler pull down and barbells out of huge pieces of wood and dumbbells out of wood with handles. And then he added more weight by gluing on big flat rocks that he found. And we put up a slack line and a climbing rope and a pull-up bar, and he put chains and weights on himself. And he would train, and he would then go to the field and play. Of course, we're out in the wilderness, and there's nobody, nobody's breathing on anybody. And he got this really cool article in the Berlin paper, Berlin Recycler. They've won the Bundesliga all the time. Cody's been there, the German top league in their country. Berlin Recycler builds gym in wild forest. And with pictures of him doing all the weight training and everything with wood and natural products. The USA rugby coach came up after he built it, and he goes, "I'd have to say this is probably the most beautiful gym in the world I've ever been in." Training gym. So we've got a 3D archery range where you not only can do a life-size cougar or bear or buck with your 5-year-old bow and arrow, and the arrows bounce off of them because it's a really dense 3D foam. But we have a life-size velociraptor, and it's just there. It's fun. You got to do that. You got to fly fish and shoot BB gun target stuff, and we have all sorts of mountain bike hikes and stuff you can do, and that part for me is part of the fun too. And then I'm decorating it for Christmas because of the size of the property we're buying. I've gone on Amazon and bought the 12-foot tall gingerbread man inflatable and the 16-foot tall snowman and stuff, because it's got to be big to be able to fit. Because our event center, which you haven't seen, is, it's the jewel of our property for sure. It has room for 150 people. It's got a loft. It's got preserved moss walls so that the moss that's on the property looks like the preserved moss that's inside. We've got 4 indoor-outdoor fireplaces that you can sit around and, inside or outside on the porches. And we've got 500-year-old alligator wood benches. Alligator juniper is what it looks like, an alligator in the bark. Comes out in northern New Mexico, and just the moose and the big orange sheep and the bobcat and the cougar and the bear. Yeah, the bear. We brought in some. We had a few days of sleepaway camp. 2 MIT double degree grads who weren't happy, even though they knew that they were pretty smart, and they figured out how to be happier. And they went to work with sexual abuse victims. So they came on property and spent almost a month there healing. And again, we didn't do the programming. We just provided the buildings and said, "Stay here, do this, shower here, eat here." But just the way you can help people heal in the wilderness. And we're only 2 hours from the Denver airport, so we're easy to get to from the Denver side too. And you're right, takes an hour to get to Breckenridge. Although those of you that want to know something inspiring, I think, Monarch, which is where both Cody and my daughter Mackenzie learned to ski, and she now lives in Salida and is the director of speech pathology at the hospital there. You know, right on the Arkansas, they kayak and they fly fish and they mountain climb, and they're living in the dream in their beautiful place in Salida. But the ski area is called Monarch, and it's only 20 minutes away from their house, so they can get up in the morning, ski a few runs, and come back and go to work or whatever. Because Matt is reintroducing the wolf to Colorado. He's got a pretty cool project that he's on. That's her husband. And long story short, Matt McShane, former coach at Air Force and Berkeley and national team and stuff, he and I are now we are super seniors. And in being super seniors, my season pass to ski Monarch ski area, beautiful 7-lift area, 3,000 vertical feet. How much am I paying you guys for my pass?
$50, $100.
Free.
Less.
Oh.
They're paying you to ski?
No, I heard 300 from you,
Oh,
and you
okay.
must
No,
have said free.
Free.
The answer is $25.
Oh, cool.
And for a year. I mean, I can ski Christmas Day. There's no limits on President's Day weekend the way some of the ski passes are. So, you know, it's fun getting old, I guess. But the joy of giving back, you know, and being lucky enough to do it, that's what we're doing right now. And I thank you for the chance to share some of these ideas and the things that we're doing.
As I hear you talk about it, I hear so many of the things so many of the principles that are in the Impact Manual. Greatest selling volleyball book of all time, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. It's sold
not even close.
Probably 400,000 copies.
Easily. The things that you're doing on the property, you're allowing people to self-explore. I hear a lot of you're not doing the program directing. You're inviting people to come and see for themselves. Make sure that it's fun to be there. Creating the team of people, being the support rather than being a carpenter, being more of a gardener, letting people experience it on their own. There's dozens of the things that are in that manual that I'm sure you're applying as you go through this. And to me, I keep 2 copies of that Impact Manual, the one that you handed to me in about 1994 when you and Dietrich came to Wisconsin. And then the last one that has all of my notes in it. The last one I think was in maybe 2019 or 2020, somewhere around there. I'm waiting for the update on that manual. I'm realizing that it may never happen, but maybe that's up to us now.
That's a tough one. I think you're going to see some stuff online, but you know, Peter Vint and lost both. Dave McCann went back to U.S. Ski and Snowboard, and so we lost the director of education. Then Jordan took the same position for online and education at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee instead of USA Volleyball. It's a step up in your career, and so they're filling that gap. Not sure who's gonna fill it. I'm gonna go to dinner Friday night with Doug Beal and his wife Noni. We have one of the cabins we nicknamed the Beal cabin, but it's you know, he's in his late 70s and he's still giving back to the sport and doing great things as well. So hopefully we are showing how you may leave coaching, but you can keep giving back. So.
Well, and keep coaching maybe in a different way, maybe not coaching the sport that we all have been involved with, but still coaching in what you're doing. Those coaching lessons work in a variety of places. Was hopefully what we're demonstrating with this discussion. I think that's
yeah. It's funny you say that. Half of the staff calls me coach.
Yeah.
They don't say, owner or Mr. Kessel or whatever. They say, hey, coach. you know,
Yeah.
and we've had those talks around the dining table about regression of the mean, and I have a Pascal's triangle thing or whatever um, that's up at, and I show the regression of the mean and the way the bell curve forms by flipping this Pascal's triangle thing over, and they watch all the beads go down and they see them always form a bell curve, and they go, how the hell does that happen? And it's because of science, and because this is why you don't put the setter right on the net.
Oh,
Yeah.
you'd be amazed how hard it is to train that out of people. And I'm doing my second career is going in the direction of your first career. So I'm leaving corporate and well, I've left corporate and all that world. But I'm coaching at two Title I high schools, and where we have a lot of building to do. And it's kind of fun to see all that and to remind yourself. Well, two things this year. The regression of the mean's always a good lesson. When you have somebody have a brilliant day and then have a bad day, you go, hey,
Yeah.
that's all right. But the other is I keep reminding myself that if they haven't learned it, you haven't taught it. And there's days I go, I don't think I taught it. So it's kind of like you got to figure it out.
Yeah, I think, some of the stuff that Rob Gray is doing at Action Coupling type down at ASU with his podcast in your backyard, basically, Steve, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I think that you're starting to see in most sports. I'm seeing it in basketball because of Brian McCormick. I'm seeing he might be a fun ad because he's going to talk team and yet he's not volleyball. I think he might be a fun podcast, but um, you're seeing some of these leaders in sports, and the work I'm going to be doing with the Dallas Stars is because of the stuff I've done at the level 5 USA hockey things at like Lake Placid. Their leaders want to do more small-sided games, and it's not like it's rocket science there either. But the Dallas Stars are starting to get into some volleyball facilities. So they've been building ice sheets. They've gone, the way you would look at it. They used to focus on the 2%, and now they're focused on the 98%. And when they were doing the 2%, they were struggling fiscally. And now that they're helping have great experiences at the 98%, they're thriving financially. You just have to keep the reality is so important that, yeah, I've got a kid that's playing pro. That's great. He's on the national team and I'm running for Paris. Wow, that's a big deal for me because he played 10 sports growing up. But at the same time, what about the 98% that don't, or 97% that don't make it to college? How do we give them that fun? How do we help them realize that there's an 80 and over national championships for masters, and so you may want to quit at 16 or 17, but how do we keep you interested in this amazing sport for a lifetime? And that's some of the places that I think your listeners can really help, because that's where the majority of people are. And when parents come in, they tend to think, oh, I'm going to get a college scholarship. But we're the number one team sport for girls. Volleyball is ahead of basketball, ahead of softball and soccer. So we have nearly 500,000 girls, but there's only 15,000 scholarships. So each year, 125,000 seniors graduate. They get a quarter of those 15,000, so they get like 4,000 scholarships for
Right.
125,000 kids coming out of the varsity senior year. Where do those other 120,000 go out of the 125,000? Where are they going? How can we help them keep loving and giving back to our sport and the amazing things that you can play. And I know one of the things I brought to Let's Keep the Ball Flying Foundation is the concept of co-ed and reverse co-ed, and same thing for volley brains. It's like we tend to see it men versus men and women versus women, but our sport is a blast to play co-ed. And probably in your city of Arizona, if you went to the Park and Rec right now, I bet the majority of Park and Rec teams playing are probably co-ed, Steve. I don't know for a fact, but
Yeah,
that
I
would be
think
my
it's
bet.
well, it's interesting. You tend to see no men, women. The Parks and Rec departments usually have a women's and a co-ed, and rarely have a men's. And then they have an open gym kind of thing. And that's been true here and in Chicago and all of that as you
Mm-hmm.
become an adult player. But I have to say, I got started in coaching when my 4'11" co-ed center in a rec league said, "You ever think about coaching?" And I'm like, "No." Just like, "Well, you think you'd be good at it?" And that conversation 23 or 24 years ago got me
Yeah,
started. So you never know.
yeah.
Well, here's a
Well,
good
thank you
example of what
to
John
both of
was
you.
talking about. The boat ride with the Wapaka boat ride is here. It's one of the biggest tournaments in the world nowadays. Talking with one of their founders, he said, we have an open division, double A, double B, and a couple age divisions and kids now. It's gotten really big. And he said, this is probably 15, 20 years ago. He said, the open guys bring the crowd, but the B players pay the bills. So
Yeah,
it's important. I mean, it
yeah,
really is important to
yeah.
keep that 98% in the sport. That's the group of people that really support the sport itself.
Well, some of the last experience I had with Mike Hewlett was Mike coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm coaching the entry level teams now. Come coach with me because we need to get the 12s and 13s to get the same or better coaching than they're getting at higher levels because we got to get them started right." And it really did make a difference, and it's kind of actually it's kind of fun at those ages too. If you in the club environment, in the middle school environment, that can be a real challenge. But again, it's making it fun, getting as many kids involved as you can, and that means people come in and say, "Well, I have 2 courts." I'm like, "No, you could probably have 20 courts here if we do it right." And they look at me when I just string my rope across the gym, and they go, "What is this?" I'm like, "It's volleyball. We're playing over a net. It's just a rope, but it's a net." And it's
Well, I guess I want to tell a closing story because I know we've been on for the hour that you like to close these things out at, or maybe you'll split it into two. I don't know. And that is stop cutting kids. If you can, create ways to stop cutting kids. Uh, we did it here in Colorado Springs where you've got 5 elementary schools feeding a junior high, and each of those elementary schools has a 6th grade team. We're a 7 and 8 grade only middle school. And so you've got 6th grade, 12 kids. Sometimes we even have an A and a B season because it's so popular. So let's just say there's 12 kids out of the 60, or the 6 schools. So you got 70, what is that, Steve? 74 kids, 72 kids,
yeah,
72 kids, I think, coming. Yeah. And they all go up with their friends. And so you go to the junior high tryouts and they cut out of the 70 plus kids, they cut down to 12 because it's the junior high.
right.
60 kids at the age of 13 are being told no to volleyball. So I went to the AD of our school district here and said, I can't take this. This kills me. And we formed a team where on Monday, the kids that were the 13th to the 24th cut, um, those kids would practice 1 day a week on Monday and just watch the PE teacher on the other 2 courts, the 8th grade and the 7th grade. They didn't even have a coach. And then on Tuesday, the next group of what would that be, 25 to 36 ranking, you might say. And then on Wednesday, the 37th to the 48th. And on Thursday, the 49th to the 60th came and practiced one day. And every 3 weeks, they would meet all the Monday kids from all the junior highs wearing a school shirt and not even a number, would go compete against the other Monday kids at their school. And then the next 2-3 weeks later, they competed at another junior high, and they'd have this thing that went from 8 to 1, and they'd play each other, and the kids coached the refereed the matches, and parents were there to provide supervision, essentially, not coaching. And although they could coach, if you wanted to have a parent be the coach, it's okay by us. You just had to have an adult. And the reason I tell this story is because the next two years out, 50% of the kids who made the high school JV, C, and varsity teams came from the cut kids.
Yeah.
The kids who were not abandoned at the age of 13, So creating opportunities to play by doing doubles in the summer and playing, boys or reverse co-ed or co-ed doubles, all these ways that doubles gives you the reps and the reading skill that you need, is I think something that even rural towns can create and make happen, because you can't get much more rural than Macaw Nation up there, 6 hours away from Seattle, and who are going to state now because they have a group of kids that start loving the game by playing doubles and playing small-sided volleyball. And the basketball people understand it. They now have 3-on-3 as part of it, and they have 6 hoops up in every damn gym in America I ever go to.
Yeah.
And then they put up one net and think volleyball's going to be fun. No, it won't be fun. The 12-on-12 is not fun. Put my rope up, Steve, and let me play 2-on-2, and I'm going to have fun.
My favorite discovery was when I I did a brief stint for high school, and they were, long story there, but they had a summer camp, and I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do? And BJ and I'm pinging people going, hey, I need to set this up. So I used a variation on your backboard placed PVC rope trick to generate about 15 courts, because I had 1 court and 45 kids. And so we're playing all these from 4th to 12th grade. So it was kind of like, okay, this is going to be interesting. But the big thing is that my use for pool noodles is to cut them into little pieces to slide them along the rope to make the different size courts I want. And it works great. And, we use it for tryouts. We use it for early season. Like most of my freshmen at this new school have not played. And it's just a great way for them to get a lot of touches. And they give you kind of crazy looks in the beginning, but they learn faster.
Because long-term athletic development is keeping as many kids in as safe an environment and as good as a teaching environment as long as possible.
Yeah.
That's LTD. Nobody knows who's going to be good when they're 13.
Right.
It just isn't known yet. And, when you teach leadership as part of the skills, and teach the kid to be self-coaching and self-actualizing, you help them teach others, and, because that what you teach, you learn, and you do all these things. I'll never forget. I do have one more story about my daughter. I'm doing a CAP course, probably in Wisconsin, BJ, and I get this call from my daughter, who we'd won the bronze medal when I coached her at 13, and she went to play for the same club, but to go to the 14 team. And I get a call, and I say, oh my God, it's my daughter. She's trying out. I got to take it to coaches, and I take it, and I hear, I've been cut. I'm just like, oh my God, honey, I'll be home tomorrow. We'll find another program. I'm so sorry. I can't believe it. I don't understand. And she's only 5'1" at the time, in size 10 feet, but 5'1". Yeah. And a dad who's 6'3" and a mom who's 6'1".
Look at the parents, for gosh sakes.
So the long story short, she calls back an hour later. I take it in front of the kids. I'm back on the team. And I come to find out that the 8 teammates that they kept and the 4 new kids that they changed her and 3 others out with got together, came in and goes, "Where's Mackenzie? Where's John, where's Mac? Where's John's daughter?" And they said, "We had to cut her." And they go, "You cut Mac? What?" And they got together and they came back and they said, as a unit, "Mr. Kessel, we think will coach us. We're sure he will. But if Mac's not on this team, we're going out the door." And they were totally serious, these 14-year-olds, totally dead serious. I wasn't there. I didn't call anybody or anything, And they were so serious that they put Mac on the team. They had a roster of 13. They didn't cut the other 4. The reason I tell this story is because she is now taller than every single kid that they cut and kept. I mean, every single kid they kept. She's taller than all of them. And she went to play in college, and being taller than all of them. Because you don't know. You want to keep as many kids as you can from like 11 to 16 before you even begin thinking about cutting, or come up with ways to help them keep playing so they can come back and give it another go.
Yeah.
Hey.
And the same principle now at Puma Hills, keeping
the same principle
all
at Puma
Hills. All those great people that have done so much for us, keeping them involved and getting them back into getting them squared away for life back in some normalcy. It's the same idea. And again, the reason to be on. So we are beyond our hour, Steve. You should take us out of here.
Okay, well, John,
thank you.
It's great to connect. We get very little chance to do this, but thanks for being with us. And for those who are listening, it wasn't an entirely volleyball hour, but it's a very valuable hour for your learning. So please, shoot us a note if you want more like this, and we'll probably have John back sometime. And thanks for the shirt. It's a nice tribute to Mike.
You bet. He was one of the best ones, and deservedly a Friar Award winner.
Yeah. Okay, we'll
Take
see you
care,
later.
you guys, and thanks for growing the game.